Live, hit this tab now.
Okay, we are live. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, bestie. Hi, friend.
Hey, hi, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Um,
You know, life is interesting lately, but today's a good day.
that's good. Life is lifing, like all
Life is
across.
really
Like we're
life
just all
in.
in it. Um, yeah, but I'm excited to have this conversation because I feel like this is a conversation that's like long in the making. We've been like talking about this for a long time, and yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So I think, I don't know, just for some like quick introductions. Also, if anybody is hanging out in the chat, um, just I don't know, let us know you're hanging out. Just give us a little shout out. Let us know if you've got a favorite character from the world of Oz. Doesn't have to be like movie related if you love the books too. Um, but yeah, I am Dana Miscellaneous, so welcome. I'm excited to hang out and chat. And this is our show where we just talk about all the stories that we love, whether it's books, movies, shows, all combined. Love adaptations and talking about those. And I'm hanging out with my bestie. So tell us who you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria, or as Dana and many people call me, Reez, Reez. So the world can adopt that, whoever watches this particular stream one day, now or one day soon. Dana and I have been friends for 20 plus years.
Long time.
Long time,
Long
long
time.
time. And all of those years we've been talking about fantasy, fiction, stories, movies, books. It's just been a thing we've always done that we're passionate about. We both like fantasy and futuristic stories and heroines and magic. And so uh, The Wizard of Oz has been a part of that conversation. And I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan and just saw the For Good movie, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. And the books, actually, you just, that really like, you put a bunch of memories in my mind because I was like, oh, yeah, we really have been. Like, we went on, like, we've talked a lot before about the hero's journey and have had our time with Joseph Campbell and all of that. And then also, yeah, then thinking more about like the heroine's journey. That's a conversation for another time. But yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, long time with stories. Okay,
Yeah,
so I do have
we
a
had
book.
a go ahead. Go
Go,
ahead. I was gonna
no,
say we had that conversation too, where we always wanted to create a tarot deck or some sort of card deck too that was all like magical women, right? And I felt like Linda and Alphaba were in that list. And so just magical women, stories of magical women. And also, I think in our personal sort of non-magic lives, the idea of women being complex and maybe conflicting characters. Are they good? Are they evil? Are they inherently good or evil? Can they be both? And this is a great story around that topic.
yeah. Oh, you just gave me chills on that too, thinking about like an oracle deck. So yeah, maybe we need to revisit that. I have quick questions for you because I know we both obviously we saw Wicked for Good yesterday, and we've seen Wicked many times since it came out last fall. Wait, was it last a year ago? Yeah,
Year ago, yeah. Year ago,
a year ago.
Thanksgiving. Year ago, Thanksgiving time.
Yeah. Um, so we've seen those. We're up to date on those. I'm curious, when is the last time, or if you remember watching Wizard of Oz? Like, has that been
I
recent?
just watched The Wizard. Yeah, it's been recent. I just watched it probably in the last couple of months. I tried with my youngest to introduce it, and we'll get into those themes of why the 1939 film is scary because it was scary for me at 8 years old. My 8 year old wasn't ready for it, and my teenager's not into, I mean, he thinks older films are slow. So it's interesting to see young people's perspective of these films, but I probably watch it. I don't know if it's every year, but I will seek it out and watch it on a regular. basis. And since I think I sought to watch it after the Wicked movie came out, I maybe sought to watch it after I watched read McGuire's first book.
Okay.
Just because it's pulling back around and I'm thinking about this 1939 film adaptation. You and I we're having a discussion on the Baum books. And though I personally haven't read them yet, I have them all in my Goodreads list and in my Hoopla uh, future holds, right, to dig into them. But whereas like my children have like complications with older movies, I seem to have like a little bit of a block with older books. And since Baum's books were, I don't know if all of them were children focused, they were written to be children's books, right? It's like they're a little boring to
I'm
me.
gonna get all into that. Yep. Okay, so that's good. So you kind of you seek out the Wizard of Oz like routinely. Like it's part of your tradition, part of your like pop culture fabric, so to speak. Whatever. Okay, cool. That's good to know. I'm curious. I feel like it's one of those movies that I too watched a lot. We'll talk more about that too. But definitely hadn't in a while until Wicked came out and then did a little revisit. So now another question. Um, when is the last time or how recently have you watched Return to Oz?
Hmm.
And
Now, is there more than one? Just Return to Oz next, and the Wiz next after
yeah, and then the
that.
Wiz is the
That's
next question, really. Yeah, because those are the
yeah.
older ones. Like those are the ones that kind of like I feel like we grew up with. Those are ones that like existed in our like childhood. Obviously, Wizard of Oz and the Wiz like before our time. Return of the Oz totally came out like we're totally dating ourselves here, but like totally came out when we were kids. Um, so those are ones that would be I feel like a little bit more likely to like just be a part of our you know nostalgia or whatever. The things that are just like kind of the stories that are a part of us. Um, yeah, there are a lot of new ones which we'll talk more about. But yeah, so just curious, like when if you recall when the last time you saw those.
I mean, recently too, sometime within the next or the last couple of months, I've watched Return to Oz twice this year, definitely. One of them was again post Wicked and reading McGuire's book is to like look at because there are references in McGuire's book that are certainly not in the play, in the Broadway show, and not in the Wicked movies, like Ozma being one of the characters, right? And sort of all of that Oz world, right? That Oz world is more referenced in the details of McGuire's book. So that made me want to go back to that story. And then on a totally unrelated, my child who roller skates around the house decided to like put their hands into their roller skates as they were wheeling on their hoverboard. And immediately my head went to the wheelers. And so when I brought up to my kid, you look like a wheeler. Of course, they were like, what is that? And I was like, we need to watch Return to Oz. But it's still too scary for
It's
an 8-year-old.
scary.
So
It is scary. Okay, we will talk more about those. Okay, moving on. I mean, I think that's a good segue to kind of talk a little bit about the McGuire books. I haven't read any of them. They're on my list now. I mean, they've been on my list, but I wanted to watch and then I'll read. So, but I want to hear. And there's more. There's like four, right? There's three or four.
there's 4 books, and I've only read the first one, and I've started to delve into the second one, but haven't gotten through it. Like maybe 30 pages in max.
Okay,
Um, but completely read and actually loved the first book,
and that's
which
Wicked,
is
right? Like it's just
that's
Wicked.
Wicked. That's what the entire Broadway show is based on, pretty much just book one of McGuire's book.
Okay.
Um, but as people have probably seen in media, that McGuire's book, whereas Wicked, the story is fairly family friendly. I'm sure we'll get into the details of how For Good was maybe a little less like kid friendly than part two. McGuire's book really is not a kid book at all, really. And it is like, Alphaba's, um, his interpretation of Alphaba's origins, Alphaba and Glinda's origin story, but more Alphaba's. I mean, we go back like the Wicked show and movie to Alphaba's birth, and sort of the family dynamics, and then we really get the world of Oz. The religion of, now I'm going to forget, the time clock, the dragon time clock. Somebody in the chat who might know more than like,
Oh
um,
yeah. Okay.
and there's a sex cult religion as well. Like Oz
I've heard
as
about
a
this.
place, yeah, Oz as a place is not prudish. It is. There's like
We're gonna
go
be
ahead.
full spoilers. Also, just if anyone is listening, we're gonna be full spoilers for all the things, just so everyone knows. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, full spoilers if you haven't at all ever seen the Broadway show or part two or part one of Wicked. um, so they don't refer to God. They definitely don't, there's not anything like the Bible in Oz. Um, there is I should have pulled the book out so I could like really look at like the references to the religions, but a portion of Ozzers are pretty like sexually open. And that's not something that you should be embarrassed about, right? Your intimate relations. And the book jumps right into the fact that Alphaba's mother, which is a part of like the Wicked screenplay, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
Broadway show, that Alphaba's mother was not faithful to her father, but technically in McGuire's book, it wasn't like she wouldn't have necessarily been shunned. She might have been defined by that, right? But we talk about that she was pretty bored with the idea of like just being at home, as a governor's wife, and loved travelers, loved the diverse set of traveling people that might come by the house, and that she might find some of them attractive and want some time, some fun time for herself when travelers came by. And that is really woven throughout the story. So I don't think it's anything like shocking at all. Um, but I was instantly in reading the book fascinated with the intricacies of the world. And part of that is because, it's a break from the traditional 1939 Hollywood show, and maybe like the focused on children's aspect of the original Wizard of Oz, right? Which really, me as a small child, was more fascinated with, um, the good witch and the bad witch story, right? And the magic nature, and the way the Hollywood movie presents the Emerald City, and what that sort of felt like watching the movie, um, particularly to see things go, since we were only watching it. I was only watching a 1939 film in the 80s, and if you're a 1980s kid, you would know that like it was annually broadcast at certain times every year, right? It was
Yeah.
something that came on the television, and I feel like my family, my mother, my family were really like, The Wizard of Oz is
It's
coming on again, right? And
yeah.
we sat down to
It was a
watch it every
tradition. It's a
year.
custom, and
Yes.
I feel maybe it came out around like winter holiday times, but like around Christmas and New Year's and stuff. But I remember it. I think it came on around in the summertime. I feel it like maybe I'm wrong, but anyway. But you're right. Like there was like it came on, and it was like,
Wonder what its release date was. Maybe it came on the anniversary of its release
oh,
date.
maybe
I don't know what
interesting.
its release.
Yeah. But anyway, yes, yeah, I remember like it was like a thing, it like came on, and when it was on, you watched it. And anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we'll get more into like the Wizard of Oz, Ron McGuire's books right now, but um this I would say I was not I mean, I'm not a fairy princess person. So though, and when we think about the Wizard of Oz, Glinda is a much more minor character. I think she's slightly more minor than the Wicked Witch of the West in the movie. When we are reading McGuire's books, Alphaba is the core of the book. This is her origin story with some information to round the story out on who Glinda is and who Glinda is in her life and who Bach is in her life and who Fiero is in her life and who her sister is in her life and how that has shaped her. And it's very much a story of um, political and social, the social political fabric of Oz in turmoil, right? And which of those characters in Alphaba herself, how she responds to the pain and suffering of others. And she is not only a powerful being, but a very empathetic being. Though, as you get further in the book, Alphaba has a story arc. And as life has taken turns and harshness, she becomes harsher in return to what has been thrown at her in life, and it's a very nicely and very beautifully summarized in the Wicked Broadway show that, like, she's not going to be, making a conscious choice of like, well, I've tried to be good my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And solely by the fact that my appearance isn't like the rest of you, my good deeds have completely gone unnoticed, right? And so screw you all. But be it that books are far more complex than television shows and movies and plays. Like, it's not a really smooth arc with Alphaba, which was the other interesting part to me in the book. She has moments even later in the book where she's still fighting for, I want to say, her humanity, her alphabaness, right? And fighting to be good, right? And to do what's right by society, and particularly the animals and the various, there's multiple cultures in Oz, right? There's which we can get more into too, um, but also um, the pain of loss of friendships and love and never being accepted. And there's scenes where she takes it out on others. The story gets far more deeper. We see at the end of Wicked for Good that Fiero, it's a very subtle part, but in their coming together, Fiero offers her his castle. That is a part of McGuire's book. She lives out the rest of her life. That castle that we see in The Wizard of Oz that Dorothy comes to, that is guarded, it is guarded by, is it guarded by the Winky Army? Like Fiero's like culture's army, the Winky Army, or who those soldiers are in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah. Gosh,
And
yeah.
it's because it's his castle because he's like a prince of Winky country, right? So the castle is deep in Winky country, and that's all in the McGuire books, and it's a very big, ominous castle. And big spoiler here. So, close your ears, but Alphaba and Fiero have a child. And that is a very complicated relationship for Alphaba. Like, she doesn't have a motherly instinct. She doesn't know what to do or how to be to this being. And that's probably one of the hardest reads in like parts of the book, because maybe it's my own motherhood, my own love or conflict of mothering, but like I definitely have moments in the book where I'm like, come on, Alphaba, get it together, this is your child. Right? But she's a complicated character. um and that's why I love the book. Like, I think it's, and it's not some big scientific Nobel Prize piece of literature, but I think it's a really damn good story, and I would read more of it, and I would watch more movies like unfolding the story of Oz, and I'd be super geeked about like more of McGuire's Oz being built out, seeing what happens to Munchkinland secedes from Oz by Nessa Rose. Like, the Wicked Witch of the East is actually like becomes the governor, but she secedes it from the power of the wizard, right? So there's that complication, like Munchkin Land becomes a sovereign state. And what's the rest of that story? There's
Yeah,
so many stories that, and we love fantasy arcs that are big, right? Fantasy worlds that are really built out. And I think Oz has that potential.
absolutely. I mean, look, this is for lack of a better term, this is the Oz verse. Like the bomb books are full of, Oz isn't even the only like place. There's other places, there's other cultures. Um okay, so you first and sort of like partway through the second book, um but you're going to pick that up again.
I hope to read all of them, and then I do hope to read all of the Baum books as
Yeah.
well. And Frank L. Baum and his son both wrote books, right?
Yes, I think I forget his name. I forget his name. I want to say it's Robert, but I could be wrong. But yes, there are other people who picked up the Oz stories. So okay, so let me go into a little bit of that. I will tell you and anyone hanging out listening, because I think you know that I did this. So Wicked came out last year, and I got really inspired. I watched a shout out to New Rock Stars. I watched this really cool breakdown with Eric Voss and Jessica Clemens, and they were talking all about Wicked, and they're just big fans. So they are fans of the Broadway show, and Eric Voss is a big fan of the Baum books, and so they just kind of went off and got into all of these details and everything, and I was like, oh my gosh, well, I mean, I love the material, love the, grew up with Wicked, or with Wizard of Oz, loved Wicked, and I have not seen the Broadway show, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But so I got really really just like geeked out about what they were talking about, and I was like, if the visual material is so great, then the stories have to be amazing. I was like, there's got to be so much more in these stories, and I want to read them. But I think that my newer thing that I've been doing for the last few years is I have learned that I really enjoy watching a thing and then reading it. I know it's like blasphemous or sacrilegious or whatever, but I, you know, that is, I used to do it the other way around, and a lot of people do it like you read it first and then you watch it, but we're always almost always disappointed. They're gonna leave things out. Anyway, I have just found for myself that if I watch it first and then read it, I watch it, I enjoy it, it's fun, it's a good time, and then I read it, it's like the world opens up. And
Yes, I agree with you.
I really enjoy that. And I think one of the big issues that why people also don't like to do this is because their they get the movie casting stuck in their mind of the character, and that's a hard thing to get out of. So anyway, that aside, I was like, I am going to go on an Oz deep dive. 2025 is my Oz deep dive. I'm going to watch every single thing I can. I'm going to watch all the visual material I can find, and then I'm going to start reading the books. So that's what I did. So in January, I started watching everything. And I think I started with like what I knew, like Wizard of Oz, Return to Oz, watched The Wiz. Um, we could talk more about that, but
We
and
should.
watched everything I could find that was like, there's a lot of animated stuff out there. There's some good TV shows that have come out in the last like 10 years. There's like a couple like decent shows. Like if you like stories in Oz, um there is a show. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it is interesting. So there's a couple I'll just kind of give some plugs for. So there's a show called Tin Man with Zoe Deschanel, and it's really got like a stellar cast. Like Alan Cumming is in this thing. Alan Cumming plays the Scarecrow in this thing. Zoe Deschanel is DG. She is DG. She, I think, works at a diner, and she gets like sucked up in a cyclone and ends in the OZ, which is the outer zone. And so it is the only what I thought was interesting about Tin Man is it was the most like departure from the source material. It was like we're going to completely do an adaptation that is like only hinting at things that people are aware of. But some
Right.
of their stuff was really interesting. Like the Tin Men are actually a soldier, a corps of soldiers. And I think this is a really good take. And I need to get more into the bomb books to actually see if this actually exists in there because so far it doesn't. I haven't found it yet. But I thought this was really interesting. In Tin Man, the Scarecrow doesn't have a brain because he knows too much. He knows stuff, and the state, like the leadership of the OZ, took his brain from him because he,
He knew
because
too much.
he knew too much. Um,
Yeah.
so it's interesting. Is that the one? Am I think Vincent D'Onofrio is in this. No, no, sorry, confusing it with another one. So the other one is called Emerald City,
Okay.
and
And
both
I
of
haven't heard of either of these.
interesting. Both of them are fairly adult. So Tin Man, I think, is more of like a mini series, and I would say they're probably in the like yeah, like the PG-13 sort of zone, the like YA kind of zone. Um, yeah, Tin Man I think is like a short series. Maybe there's like 4 or 5 like longish episodes. Richard Dreyfuss is in this thing anyway. Like it really, there's a lot of people in this show. Um, then Emerald City is a series, probably hoping to get more seasons, but got canceled after its second season. And the first season's pretty good. The first half of the second season is pretty good, in my opinion, anyway. And I think then they made some choices where it's like, why? And maybe that's why they didn't continue it. I don't know. Um, but I think in Emerald City, yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio is in Emerald City and plays the wizard. Um, he is a member of a group of scientists who discovered a portal. Like they made a portal, they discovered it, and they walked through it, and they found Oz. And you know, and there they stayed. And he does what the wizard does. So it's interesting. Like it's got some interesting takes. In Emerald City, they do spend a lot more time with the witches of the East. No, sorry, she's gone. The witches of the West, the witches of the South, and the witches of. Oh no, the anyway. There's just more witches in it, which is kind of cool.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, these are big, broad takes. As someone who didn't read the bomb books, are do these fit into any of the original like world?
Not
Was there a culture of witches? Was there
No, that's the thing. So like, okay, so I also watched a bunch of the animated stuff, and I think I told you before there's a lot that's kind of fun. There's one show on Prime. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I should have written it down. Um it's called like I want to say it's Return to Oz, but that's not it. It's like it might be Journey to Oz, but Journey to Oz is another one. This one in particular, I'm so sorry, y'all, that I don't have it. I need to find it. But this one in particular was really good. It was thoughtful, it was deep and meaningful, and it was a cartoon for kids. Um, but the granddaughter of Dorothy Gale gets sucked through a portal, goes to Oz, ends up meeting the granddaughter of the Wicked Witch of the West. And I think their last name is West, actually. She goes by West. They meet. Um, they like become best friends, and they're basically healing generational trauma. Like they start to learn about the history of their families, and they begin to kind of like dissect this stuff. The other thing that I think was super cool in this story is that so there is a gnome, like there are a group of gnomes. They live underground. They live under Oz. But in this particular story, the Wizard of Oz has like stolen uh, Emerald City is built on gnome land and basically like siphons gnome magic, and the gnomes originally built Emerald City. So there's all of this like there's like interesting class stuff with it, and the fact that like the Ozians owe all of their wealth to the gnomes. Like there's some really interesting stuff going on. So I was like so excited. I was like, "Oh my gosh, if all of this stuff is in the bomb books, I'm ready." So I feel like I watched all the things I could find. I've realized since then I've missed a couple of things. But
Does that include, did you watch the Oz Great and Powerful?
oh, of course, it's the worst. It's the worst. Actually, I started with that. Now that I think about it, I started with that because I did everything like chronologically. I was like, I'm going to do this chronologically as far as the story goes. Oz Great and Powerful, I didn't like it when I
And
watched
that
it the
one's,
first time. It's
yeah,
not
that's
good.
James Franco, right?
It is not.
James
Also,
Franco, who's in it? Michelle
next to
Williams.
Rachel Weisz, Michelle Williams, and Mila Kunis, like, dude, I don't know. I It's not good. And it honestly has nothing to do with James Franco. It's a bad story. It's a bad story. I think that there's some it's well made. They put a lot of money into it. Um, there's it's got a high production value. There's some great, good costuming. The first part of it, yeah, I think Zach Braff is in the first part of it. It's in black and white, and they're in the U.S. Because Oswald, whatever his name is, Oscar, whatever, Oscar Banks or whatever, whatever the wizard's name is, um, he yeah just wants to be like a powerful guy. He's just like, I meant for
Did the
more.
Wizard of Oz have a name? Did the gentleman who is the Wizard of Oz have a name?
So I do think his name. I think they do. I think Dorothy learns his name. I feel like I have to read all of these books again now. But let me. Okay, yeah. Let me get. I think his name is Oscar. I think his name is Oscar. Um, because because there is a reason his name is sort of like Oz. Like his name is like Oscar Siegfried or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why. And he was like, and isn't that's interesting. So I I started reading the books, and like you said, Maria, they are for children, and they are boring. Um, like I was like, where is everybody getting all of this stuff? Like, where's everybody getting all these hot takes? So I think I probably need to continue because there is also some interesting things. I will say there's some weird and gruesome stuff in the books, and that maybe is also just probably a product of its era where there wasn't always like a preservation of um you know like innocence necessarily. So like Dorothy's like a
Right.
7 or 8 year old girl. Like she is a
Yes.
little girl. um and this horrible thing happens to her, and she's living in this horrible time. So I will say what I find most interesting about the books in general is that like this is a truly American fairy tale, and I think that that's really interesting. Like this is like
Right, because in some way it's built around the Depression and the Dust Bowl of the Midwest, right?
yep,
So her family is very impoverished, farms have turned to dust, right? Like
yes,
people are struggling.
yes,
Um,
there's no
yeah,
hope in sight. It's bleak. And it's written that way. Like it's painted in this really like, yeah, I mean, I do imagine like the sepia tone of the movie because that is sort of like how you imagine it. I think there's also some hot takes. I don't know where I got this from or if this is somehow referenced in the books, but this idea that the Dust Bowl has blown over and it is what has made the desert that surrounds Oz. So like
yeah,
these
because there's
weird
there's a desert that separates our world from
from
Oz,
Oz. Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So yeah, so Dorothy goes to Oz, and we don't really understand why the Wicked Witches Wicked. There's also a witch Mombi that like
Yes.
is hardly referenced in any like anything, but she gets a little bit of some spotlight in Return to Oz and
Oz, she
also
does.
in Emerald City. Ozma is
In
also
in
in Emerald City.
is Mombi have multiple heads in the Baum book? Or is that a
Mombi
movie interpretation?
has um multiple faces. So depending on her mood, she can, yeah, is it her? Yes, I think Mombi has multiple faces. But yeah, they make Return to Oz is a Halloween movie and it is designed to scare children. Um so yeah, but the one thing, so there's a couple things in the Wizard of Oz book that I was like, oh my gosh, clutching my pearls. Just 100 years later, things are just a little different. First of all, Dorothy is a little girl, obviously handling things that like a grown woman would have to deal with in this story. And the wizard asks her, so in the movie, the wizard says, "Bring me the broom." In the book, I think he asks for the head. He says, "Bring me the head." He asks this child, to bring him the head of this witch. Um, I hope I'm remembering that wrong, but I just remember being like, "Oh my god!" And then other things. So the Tin Man is also a real tragic story, and I can't remember if it's the Wicked Witch of the East. I heard somebody say it's the Wicked Witch of the East, but I remember it being the Witch Mombi. But the Tin Man, he's a woodsman, and he seeks the love of a particular person. He goes to like one of the witches seeking help, but I forget exactly what happens, but I think what happens ultimately to him is that the witch curses his axe and his axe begins to chop his body up. So he first starts by chopping off his arm. So he goes to the tin maker and he's like, "Can you make me a new arm?" And he's like, "Sure, yep." And then it happens to his
Gruesome.
leg. And so like after all of this, his axe just is chopping off body parts
Gruesome.
at no so gruesome, and at no point he did not think to stop using this axe. Like there's just like pieces in the book where I'm like, is this how kids books are? Like dumb 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 and horrible, like, so I got pretty, well, I didn't get that far into them. There's like 30 of them. I think I stopped around book 6 maybe, I think. So I think I finished Ozma of Oz, which for those of you who don't know, before the wizard takes over Emerald City, Emerald City is ruled by a royal family, and Ozma is the princess. She is the rightful ruler of Emerald City. This is mostly like ho hummed in the book, right? Like, not a big deal. Like, Ozma's like, "Oh, yeah, I'll get my crown back." Blah, blah. I'm like, girl, what? So, again, children's
Well,
story.
here's where we can like meld or can like in the McGuire books, Ozma, the idea of Ozma is that there is a succession of young women who are the Ozma, and they take succession after. So this is a matriarchal society, right? The head is a queen or Princess Ozma, right? And she is replaced in that genetic dynasty over and over again. So in McGuire's book, as the time of the wizard,
Interesting.
there is still an Ozma somewhere. And the people of Oz ponder where she's at and can she be put back into power, and the line should have been kept, so there must be an Ozma like somewhere
Somewhere.
to in some way save them, replace the wizard and take over and make Oz magical again.
So Ozma in the movies that we're familiar with, so in Return to Oz, she's sort of like this hidden. It's like we see her in these like shadows or like prisma, or like she's kind of hidden and then is given like she becomes like corporeal or something. Um in the
She's a
books,
spell has been put on her by the witch
by
Mombi has put a
Mombi.
spell and imprisoned her. Yes, yeah.
So in the books, and I find this really interesting, and they do get into this in the show Emerald City. Um, so Ozma was, someone hid her and gave her to Mombi to hide her. Um,
Mm,
what happened
okay.
to her parents? I'm not sure. So somebody gave Ozma to Mombi to hide her, and by hiding her, to hide her, Mombi casts a spell on her that turns Ozma into a boy. And Ozma spends her whole most of her childhood as a boy, um, and then it ends up being turned into a girl. And there's only like a small amount of time that we spend with that, but like all of that is really interesting. And I think if we were to like revisit some pieces of the story now, also we'll talk more about that later, but that I just think there's definitely some themes going on. And again, though, I'm like, I don't know how much of this is people reading into it or if it was really there, because I'm not totally getting that. I There is definitely strange stuff happening in Emerald City. The wizard requires everyone to wear emerald tinted glasses, and that's why everything looks green, is because you're literally looking through things with green tinted glasses. So I think that's definitely symbolism. I think the yellow brick road is like gold, everything's leading to Emerald City. So I think Baum was putting that stuff in there, but it's not heavy-handed, because I think he's also like, I'm writing books for children. Like literally writing books for 7-year-olds. So
Right.
but I
And
think
we're talking, when did the first Wizard of Oz book come out by Frank Elbaum?
I should have. I'm so sorry.
19,
I should have come with that. I actually think it might have been more like 1890
yes.
something or 1880 something even, but maybe, or but also 19 like 03 stand comes to mind. Um but definitely like around, yeah, turn of the century, um
1900, right at the turn of the century, right at the turn of the
1900.
century, 1900, right? So we're talking about pre-depression. We're talking about uh, an escalating industrial era, right? So we're certainly talking about, like you had said earlier, children are perceived is their childhood, right? I mean, children could work in the 1900s, right? In the late 1800s, they could take labor jobs. Um, we all married younger. We married
Yeah,
in our preteens, basically. Somewhere you were ready for marriage somewhere between 13 and 20
you were an
or
elder by the
20,
time you were 30 because you died at 45. You, I mean,
right? And then we're talking about, right? We're talking about society with the industrial era where you either lived, there was not a middle class, right? You lived either in what we would consider extreme poverty, right? You lived hand to mouth. You took in enough to like keep a roof over your head and put food on the plate. We had very little things or forms of entertainment. They were very physical forms of entertainment, right? Maybe the traveling carnival came through town, or you saw some sort of performance, or live musicians played a song, and you read a lot, right? And so there, to
if you
me,
had
that
access to
also, like,
books.
if you had access to books, and I mean maybe potentially for very rural children, right? And the kids of farmers, it was probably very little education overall, but we had imagination and fantasy, right? And then we had probably austere, severe, sort of religious ideology, right? And the consistent reading of the Bible, which is a fairly magical piece of literature, right? With lots of, if you didn't have, I mean, we're reading the Bible nowadays with tons of visuals, right? Between movies and other books to imagine. We've all seen what Egypt looks like, right? We've all seen what the Middle East looks like, but these children, like, these are fantasies in their minds, right? So I'm trying to put myself like in Frank L. Baum's shoes and the children's shoes, and like sort of what you might consider writing for a kid. I think all of it, and this sort of is a good segue into why early movies are scary, like why the books are scary to us, right? Like why the visuals and the storytelling are even darker than we would want to present to our kids right now. That chopping off of body parts, that bringing the witch's head, the very honesty about like life is harsh and Dorothy lives in poverty and her parents have passed. I think that's consistently a story. She does not have parents, they've died in some
Yeah.
manner, and her aunt and uncle are raising her. Um, and I mean, we all know stories of orphans, right? When you're an unwed woman and an orphan child, you're at the bottom of the barrel, right? In American society. But those would have, I could see how those would be more acceptable at the time Frank L. Baum's writing it, but then and how for children, let's say of the 80s and up, or maybe 60s, 70s, watching The Wizard of Oz from 1939, like they were still sort of in that some way in that era in 1939, right? They're still telling the story in this like I'm thinking, imagining the producers of the 1939 film of like this is really dark and we have to make this creepy, and the Wicked Witch is very evil, and the sets are ominous.
Yeah.
Um, and by the time we're watching it in the 80s, it's like, oh crap, like oh
Yeah.
crap,
Well, and
like
I actually think I think that the you turning it into a musical was in 1939 their aspect of lightening it up a little bit. Like let's take this really this like it's kind of a dark story. It's got some really dark parts, this story, but it is a big piece of American, yeah, like American fairy tale literature. And so, and I think also, I don't know enough about what was going on in the movie industry at the time, but Technicolor had like just become a thing. And so it was like, what is a fantastical story that we can tell? And yeah, what is a fantastical story that we can tell that people are familiar with, something that we can bring to the screen, that we can color and we can colorize, because that was like another big piece of it. But I think adding the musical elements, changing a couple pieces kind of lightens it up a little bit. um I think that's a good segue. I mean, I will just say this, but I think it's a good segue to talk a little bit more about the Wizard of Oz. I think too, I don't know what audiences were like 125 years ago. And these books are for children. They are for kids. So I don't think that Baum was necessarily thinking about, really crafting long character development, long story arcs, and getting involved with a lot of character development. And I don't really think that wasn't the point. Just like you said, like kids were, they if they were lucky, they probably went to the schoolhouse for the morning, and then they went, or whatever, and at some point they went and they worked on the farm, and there might not have been a lot of opportunity to just imagine and play, or and so these might have
yeah.
been nice and easy. um and so, okay, so yeah, so I think, okay, so let's talk a little bit about,
I
yeah.
forgot to mention. Well, I mean, this is a good time to mention it. Like, I didn't watch all the movies that you've watched, but I did watch a couple of documentaries on
Oh yeah.
the Wizard of Oz film, right? And learned that the musical, the film, The Wizard of Oz, like it had the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, had become a musical production, a traveling show by like as early as 1902. So the book came out in 1900. By 1902, this Wonderful Wizard of Oz was already a stage production, right? So the film, in some way, didn't just adapt directly from the book, it adapted from almost 40 years
Just, yeah, like
of
Wicked.
a musical stage production that had traveled around the country. And so you had audiences for 40 years in the early 1900s were like getting just that chunk of the entire L-bomb story, right? Just the wonderful Wizard of Oz story, which I can't remember from the documentary if it was directly the story we get in the musical, the 1939 Wizard of Oz, or because there were some like other adaptations that actually had in the documentaries that I seen, there was a TV show, holiday TV production of some Wizard of Oz thing in like the 1960s in which like Mombi and Ozma were like part of the story. So they were taking a
Wow.
whole other part of Oz and putting it in a play, not a musical, but like a play stage production. So nonetheless, we have like 40 years of various acting companies and traveling performers and performance companies putting on the story of the Wizard of Oz in some way.
Yeah. I think too, and maybe you got this in one of the documentaries. I do believe there is another movie that came out actually prior to the very popular one that most people know. But I think it's like a black and white movie, and I think it came out maybe even 10 years or so before um, the 1939 one. Um,
Was it a silent film or was it what after audio?
that's a good question. It does have a little bit of a silent film kind of look to it that I recall seeing like the image for it. Um, but yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, yeah, so like these stories were a big part of, they were popular. They were a big part. I mean, that's also in reading the books, he kind of starts every book by say giving a message to his readers, and it's almost like, thank you so much for asking me to keep writing these stories. Like I feel like I'm getting to like there's a point where I feel like he's saying like I was gonna stop writing them, but then my readers kept sending me letters saying to like tell more stories about Dorothy going back to Oz. Um, I will say too, just for the books, they kind of depart a little bit, and you do spend. They're not all about Dorothy, right? Like there's a whole book about Ozma. Um, there's a whole book about the Wogglebug, which is like this whole other character. It was just weird. And the Wogglebug comes to our world and gets really obsessed with Gingham. It's a very strange. It's just like why, but it's for kids anyway. Um, so Wizard of Oz, we both talked about, or a little bit of like recognizing like that was kind of like a big part of our childhood. It would come on TV. This was like, I mean, cable was new, y'all. Cable was new, and you were maybe lucky to have it. And if you didn't have it, even if you did have it, you still watched like the stuff that just was broadcast through TV.
Right.
Um,
Whatever the executives told you should be watching.
That's how it was. And it came on when they
Right.
said it and you watched
Yeah.
it. And so, yeah, this came on usually at least once a year, maybe a couple times a year. But so, yeah, Wizard of Oz was like a big deal. In my more recent rewatch, um, I didn't realize how actually few songs there are in it. Like, I think that it's like three songs or something in The Wizard of Oz.
There is.
I just it's
No, the
not
very
as
first
many as you
song
think.
is Munchkin Land. The first song is "We welcome you to Munchkin Land." La, 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 da, 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 da. We're off to see the wizard,
We're off to see
right?
the wizard.
And we're off to see the wizard goes all the way through her picking up everybody. Like they don't sing. I mean, they have every person has their little, I've only had a brain, but they're really short pieces. I've only
Yeah.
had a brain is short and they're kind of the same song in different form. If I only had a brain, if I only had a heart, if I only had courage, right? And then they go right into, we're off to see the wizard.
Yep.
And then the next song, there's a song in the Emerald City, isn't there? What is the Emerald City
I
song?
don't I don't know if there is actually a song in the Emerald City. I just think there's a little bit of fanfare. Like there's like the horse and some like ribbons and confetti and stuff. But the other
The beauty
song,
salon, yeah.
gosh, I need to rewatch these. So there's like somewhere over the rainbow. We're off to see the wizard, which is like you're right, like a huge medley. If
Hmm.
that's the right word for it, because does it incorporate Munchkinland and off to see the does is Munchkinland a part of Off to See the Wizard?
Yeah, like it
Okay,
starts out with like what we welcome you to Munchkin Land, fa la 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 la, and then it ends with we're off to see the wizard, the
okay.
wonderful Wizard of Oz.
And then there's like yeah, them picking up for you know what? Because that is also kind of how in Wicked, Dancing Through Life is a huge like montage is probably not it's not the right word, but Dancing Through Life is huge. It incorporates them like in the library and doing all of that stuff, and then it also incorporates Glinda giving Elphaba the hat, and then her showing up. They all go to the Oz Dust. Their whole dance, all of that is all part of Dancing Through Life. It's really wild to think of like constructing things that way. So yeah, it seems like Off to See the Wizard is another song like that that just is kind of repeated throughout the movie. And then the other one that comes to mind is it's my favorite one, I think. It's you're out of the woods, you're out of the da 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 whatever that song is.
I'm actually sitting here looking at the soundtrack. I mean, it's technically huge, but it's mostly orchestra music. It's
Mhm.
mostly it's an orchestrated movie, right? It's an orchestrated soundtrack with a couple of songs. I mean, and mostly it's, the Munchkins, Judy Garland, uh, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, the Witch never sings, the Wicked Witch of the West never sings. She has no musical numbers. I
Yeah.
don't think the wizard sings in any sort of way. It's just like Dorothy and her crew,
Yeah. So it's
and the
like
rest is orchestrated pieces.
so they they introduce these songs, they kind of lighten it up with these musical numbers, but it's not like yeah, I feel like it's not like Wicked. It's not like or even some of the other even, other things that we're just now familiar with like, things that just come with music like Frozen or you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So it also just makes me wonder like musical evolution, I guess. I don't know anything about that, but that's just, makes me a little curious. Like did they always plan it where other songs cut out? Um yeah. So, I don't do you have a favorite song from The Wizard of Oz?
Just gonna go right in probably to the majority of humans and say somewhere over the rainbow.
Which one?
From the Wizard of Oz or Wicked? Are we saying Wizard of Oz or
From
Wicked?
Wizard of Oz, from Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz, over the rainbow. I mean, I'm
Oh
just
yeah, over the
gonna,
rainbow.
probably
Yeah.
with the majority of people over the rainbow.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, as we continue the conversation around the parts that were scary, I mean, I think a lot of that orchestrated music is really intense, right? It creates a lot of intensity. It creates the emotion in the movie. It creates fear, right? The costumes of the actors are so like overdone. Like, nowadays we want it to be as real as possible. And I'm very curious about the future of a Wizard of Oz remake, right? Which I think it's publicly like it's in development, right? A Wizard of Oz
Oh really? Oh,
movie.
actually, hold that thought. We'll talk more. I didn't know, so
Yeah, we'll
let's
talk
talk
about
more
that.
about
We'll
that.
talk about that later. But like, I really these interpretations, but watching it in the 80s, what was happening overall between the costumes, the orchestrated music, and the sets, just that's what created an aspect of fear. So I think I was curious with the L. Bomb books and earlier presentations of the Wizard of Oz, like how much was really supposed to be scary, right? And I think it's refreshing and Wicked that like the story is more complex. The story really isn't about fear. There are aspects of like we're getting into more like good and evil versus like in The Wizard of Oz, I don't see this big arc or a really good story around the wizard and the witch, right? Like we don't have a really good story in The Wizard of Oz. And Dorothy is a pawn that she's just trying to get back home, right? And she, because we know now the witch is like a house killed my sister, and this excuse me, all bimbo in a big pink dress. I'm doing Alphabra's interpretation. Literally just handed my sister's shoes to somebody else and I want them back, right? She's a pawn in all of this. Glinda made her a pawn, the wizard makes her a pawn, and Alphaba's just effing pissed about all of it, right? And so Dorothy never really gets the chance to like, we don't get the chance, or I guess like the viewer doesn't get any more context on the Wicked Witch of the West. We see her come to Munchkin Land and make everyone afraid, and then we don't hear about what she's done. Like, we don't, like, there's no big story arc.
No.
It's just like, it is the lighting and the music and the costume that's like, I'm afraid now at 8 years old of the Wicked Witch of the West.
Well,
And
and I think too, and maybe when you're younger and certainly at an earlier time, like villains are just villains because we say that they are. Like yes, this person's bad and they're scary, and we have a reference for it because of the neighbor who's mean, riding her bike, who stole Toto. But that, yeah,
right,
that song.
right.
Like we call them mustache twirling villains. They don't have any real reason why they're doing what they're doing. They're just like,
Yes,
um,
yeah, she's that's exactly all we get in the Wizard of Oz of Alphaba. But nonetheless, I don't know what 8-year-old Maria thought, but like I can tell you I was a green wicked witch multiple times in my childhood for Halloween. Like
yeah,
I was never Glinda. I never chose, the pink poofy tiara wearing dress. I was the Wicked Witch. I loved that I had a prosthetic nose that tried to stick to my face and didn't succeed very well. And painted myself green from head to toe, had the big hat, had the broom, right? I was the Wicked Witch of the West. When we did the play. I went to like a school district in which we were doing Broadway show plays from elementary school. We didn't just start in high school. My elementary put on musicals and we did mini versions of them. And then we did like full school versions. So kind of the older kids that would have been like fifth grade got all. But I remember we did a smaller version. I wanted to be the Wicked Witch of the West. I can't remember if I was or not, but I know I wanted to be the Wicked Witch of the
yeah,
West, right? I wanted the to do the cackle. I wanted to like you said, like be the villain, right?
yeah,
Because there is something that feels like there's a lot of depth and complexity, even when we don't have the backstory yet. But it feels like there's depth and complexity to the wicked person, to the evil
yeah.
character.
I think in for the Wizard of Oz, I think the things that scared me the most as a kid, um, just the things that I just find just kind of scarier are the trees. They get mad at Dorothy for, I think it's like the lunch pail tree or the sandwich tree or something like that. But she takes food off the tree and they get mad, and they're scary to me. And then the monkeys were always scary. The flying monkeys. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you have any like favorite scenes from the original Wizard of Oz?
Definitely, I mean, very similar to Wicked. I love the coming into Emerald City. Like I love the entrance into Emerald City. I mean, I loved the costuming, which would have been like appropriate Victorian times, right? You're looking at very colorful sort of Victorian costuming that's made even more magical by like the patterns and the prints and all of the things around it. And leading up to that, which I love that they did in Wicked too, the poppy field, right? Like it's their like last stage before coming into the Emerald City. They're walking through this vast field of flowers. I think in Wicked they're tulips over poppies, but
Yeah.
like this vast flower field. And there was just something about that, those rolling fields to see the Emerald City. And then coming into this like very exuberant place because we're presented with Emerald City seems to be this like vibrant, happy, musical, um, colorful. I mean, similar to like the Hunger Games, like whatever the hell that city's called in the Hunger Games, right? It's
The
like
capital.
pe- the capital, people are just like done up way more than
Yeah.
we dress and look now, right? And then in that whole look and feel was fun to me. Plus, then, like you said, it's an antithesis to what we just experienced in the movie, which was like this dangerous forest with like angry trees
Yeah.
and darkness and scariness. So it's like, okay, we're through that now. Now we're in this fabulous city.
Yeah, and if you are a reader from like 1900, I don't know, and thinking about like maybe coming from harsh poverty and having to like work in the field when you're 8, I don't know, maybe the idea of Emerald City is really just exciting and um I don't know, like just like this place of like beauty and wealth and just yeah, it's I don't know, interesting. Um okay, so you said you also recently watched The Wiz. We don't need to spend a ton of time on it, but I just want to touch on it just for a moment. You recently watched The Wiz or within the last year?
Within the last year, it's probably been like that was probably earlier in the year post seeing Wicked One.
Yeah.
But I haven't in my life, I haven't watched The Wiz that often. I feel like I've maybe only watched since I was little. When did The Wiz come out? 83,
Yeah, probably
84.
82, 83, maybe 80.
Yeah,
But
I feel
yeah,
like
early
I
80s.
may have only watched The Wiz maybe 3 or 4 times max in my entire life. Like, I don't, I mean, it I know the story and I don't know the story. I feel like I know the songs and may have listened to the songs more often from The Wiz than I have like the storyline, right? The Wiz had a similar presentation to The Wizard of Oz. Like when The Wiz came out after it was like at the theaters, then The Wiz every once in a while would be on the TV to watch, right? As like, a presentation of The Wiz.
Okay. That's funny. I do not ever remember it being on TV because I don't think I saw it as a young person. It's definitely something that I watched. I'm pretty sure it's something that I watched like, as an adult, as a young adult, also because I was interested in movies and film and, just wanted to see that. And then I watched it with my deep dive. Um, I, I will say, I do I'd love to know more about it. I'd love to know more about, the writing and the making of it. So I might spend some time like trying to find that. I also there is a within I think it was in 2015 maybe 2016 or something. I think there is a I didn't know this, but I recently found this out. There is a The Wiz Live, um, and it has like Queen Latifah and David Allen Greer and Stephanie Mills and um, just other people. And I think you might be able to watch it on Prime. So like I think it's a stage show that's filmed so that you can watch
Hmm.
it. So I'm gonna check that out. But I honestly like came like found that out like yesterday, and I was like, oh, I gotta check this out because my thought too is like while we're in Oz mania, if we can call it that, I don't know. I feel like The Wiz might be good for a remake or like a revisit because it is like watching it. I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, this is it's amazing. The songs are amazing. Um, and there's so much in the costuming of the film that is like it's so wonderful. But you can tell that they did not have the production that you would have today. You know, they just did not have that level of production value that you would have today. And so I'm like, get the production value it deserves and like make this again. You know, because it is really great. The songs are amazing, but I do think that where Dorothy from Kansas is having a dream, it does feel like Dorothy from Harlem is in a nightmare. Like the Wiz is scary. There's some parts of it that are, I mean, which is also kind of like classic for '80s. Like stuff was just
I was
scary
gonna
in the
say
'80s.
that because I feel like around the time The Wiz came out, my favorite television show would have been Fame, right? First the movie Fame comes out and then Fame became a TV show, right? Like a regular series. And I then as a child became obsessed with dancing and I danced my whole life. Like Fame was a big, right? So Ease on Down the Road from The Wiz, Ease on down the road would have been in like every child's um, some class of your dance troupe for your annual recital would have been performing Ease on Down the Road and doing like whiz costumes like during that time period. Like it was a prominent, like, we pulled in our like childhood dance classes and studios from performances like The Wiz and like Fame and like The Wizard of Oz, right? But Ease on Down the Road in particular, um, and the look and feel of The Wiz was like a part of dance culture, deeply embedded in like dance culture.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting about The Wiz is it doesn't follow Dorothy's story. Like Dorothy Dorothy from Harlem has just a little bit of a different path through Oz than Dorothy from Kansas. And Dorothy from Harlem um, goes underground. Like she goes underground and she what is Evelyn? She meets Evelyn, who I feel like is kind of like the almost like the gnome king a little bit maybe from the books. Um sort of, but so it's yeah, it's just a little bit of a different story. And but I think it's worth, I don't know, like I'm not a person who makes movies or puts money up for movies or makes decisions about these things, but
Right.
I think it would be I think it's a good idea to revisit it. um and if anyone is watching or hanging out, there's nobody in the chat, I think it's just me and Maria, but if you do check this out, and I'd love to know in the comments in general, like if you have a favorite or any good memories from those older movies. We're not really talking about, like Wicked and Wicked for Good, but the things that you remember from growing up. I'm also assuming older people are listening. If you are a younger person and Wicked and Wicked for Good is only your thing, hey, you can tell us about it. Um, okay,
Old or
so
young, if you're someone like you said, Dana, if you're old or young, if you're someone who wants the origin story and interpretations and fan fiction, right, of a world, right, then you'll dig back in, you'll go back. I mean, we've got all these streaming services. If it's not free, you certainly can pay for it on Prime or Paramount or
yep,
Apple TV, right? And like watch anything that you really want to watch.
yeah. Well, and it is actually cool to see on streaming right now the stuff that's trending. So like Wicked is trending, The Wizard of Oz is trending. Cuz people want to see that stuff. So it'll be I think The Wiz is actually on Netflix. Like I think it's on Netflix. Like you can just go watch it. If you got it, assuming everybody's Netflix, right? I don't. That's a sorry, y'all, that's a very privileged assumption on my part. So let's like moving on. Okay, let's talk about Wicked and Wicked for Good. Um, so I think that have you seen the stage show? Did you see it?
Seen very in person, I've seen very few Broadway shows
Okay.
in person. But I am very enamored and an avid listener to Broadway shows, Broadway show musical soundtracks, right? So I was listening to the Wicked soundtrack and watching whatever I could get off of YouTube to like see the stage show before Wicked was even a thing. I mean, partially is like, I don't have Broadway show musical ticket money.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons. Like it was one of the I love the Hamilton soundtrack, and luckily they filmed Hamilton and put it on the TV, or else I'd never have physically seen like Hamilton in person because every time I've wanted to potentially consider seeing Hamilton, tickets are $200 to $500 a pop, right? So like I just, I've just not gone to see them, but like um, I would love to. I think what I've seen so far is phenomenal. I'd love if we get comments like in the future. I'd love to hear people's biggest joys about seeing Wicked live on stage. Um,
Yeah.
and from what I've seen, I and what I've read so far, it sounds like Wicked for Good has done Wicked and Wicked for Good have done a really good job of um, I think the biggest fandom is of people saying like this is brought to life so much of what was amazing about the Broadway show.
Yeah, that's what I've heard because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the show, like the Broadway show either. Um, but I've watched a lot of videos of like other fans, talking about it, and then yeah, feeling just feeling good, feeling swelled with love for what they've been able to do, and some of the things that that they're able to do in film that you just can't do on the stage too. Just some of those kind of like bolder moves, and that's what's great about that's what's just great about visual storytelling, and where we are at now with graphics and CG and just the things that you can do. And so I think it's not to like downplay all of the amazing work that happens on stage shows and stage hands and all of those actors, but it's a different medium. It's a different medium. And so I didn't realize that Adina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth were like Glinda and Elphaba. It makes sense, and I'm not surprised until like watching Wicked, and then they come out and they're like the whoever they are, those historical people. And I was like, oh, why is this significant? And I just thought I was like, oh, they must be the people. Anyway, I looked it up later and I was like, oh yes, that's why. But I love when they can do things like that. It gives a great nod to all of the work that's done before, for one, but it's also a nice little it's just a nice little like something for the fans. And yeah, so I like that. Okay, I'm checking out my notes here. So I feel like I oh yeah, that I had a couple just kind of curious in general on just some of your thoughts on like bringing Oz to life and costuming. I know you had like touched on it, but just in terms of like just the movie, the look of the movie itself and its production, and just kind of like bringing Oz to life and costuming. And I don't know if you had any like you know thoughts, feelings, ideas, vibes.
I think it's great. I think like one of the things that I noticed that they probably could have like it's pretty apparent in the books. Again, not seeing the stage production, but like I would have wanted to see in such a dynamic movie that you could tell the difference without a character having to tell you that they were a munchkin from Munchkin Land, right? In McGuire's books, the Munchkin people aren't short. Like there's no correlation between the word munchkin and small. Munchkin people are not small in Oz. So I don't know where this in Frank L. Baum's books,
That's what I'm
if the
thinking. I
Munch,
don't think they're small in Franco Baum's books either, but I need to I would need to go back and look. I honestly feel like that's Baum's. Well, those books came out around the same time. Maybe just Baum
they're
and
smaller stature. I think they're of smaller stature, but they are not little people. They are
right.
not,
And I
right?
don't even
They're
know.
and
I just feel like they just remind me of like hobbits kind of, but they're like agrarian and sweet. But that doesn't mean that they're small. So yeah, I don't know. I would need to
yeah,
double check that in Baum's books.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Like, you know how we say, even in our society, like certain cultures have a tendency to be taller
Mm-hmm.
overall, like as a people, right? I think it's something like that,
Just like
right?
that.
That, yeah, like you're not going to get a 6 foot Munchkin lander kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, also look, this is a little
so
bit of a tangent, but in Baum's books there are other cultures and other people, and there are like
yes,
China, like they're like China doll. There's like a China doll citizenry. Um
yes. So
and
there's this also
yeah,
ask,
all kinds of
yes.
stuff.
And
Anyway,
the Winkies, I believe, and I don't know if this was in Bombs, but it's in McGuire's. Like the Winkies are a browner people. Like Winky country is a browner country. So like the fact that, Hollywood again chooses a love. I mean, we love Cynthia Erivo like as Alphaba, but also Fierro like should be a person of color in my, I mean, that's the description of Winkies, right? Like Winky country. And we need more of that, like
yeah.
in Hollywood overall, right? Not that people aren't handsome and, yeah, they're going to bring big dollars to the film, right? And I think I've watched enough like cast interviews to know the cast loved each other, right? And had great relationships and energy. So, there's different ways to look at that, but I overall I was trying to get at the Winkies were a people. The Winkies are a people. The Munchkinlanders are a people. The Aussians are a people. People who
Yep.
live like in that aspect near or and around Emerald City
Emerald
are a
City.
people. And I kind of wanted to be able to see that represented when you're at Shiz, like in particular, when you're at Emerald City, like
Yeah.
an Aussian versus a Winkian versus a Munchkinlander. And it's a land divided in four with Emerald City at the center. So it's like Animal Kingdom, Winky Country, Munchkin Land. What am I missing? Something else. Like there's there's four factions. Um, or like Glinda is always saying she only says it in the movie once. She's like Glinda from the upper uplanders,
I'm Glinda Upland
upland
from the from
upland
up from
something
the
like that.
upper
She's from the
uplands.
uplanders, right? So like she's from a people too. So like to really like be able to see that
Yeah.
in the film. Like if there were anything, and I don't have much, I mean it's not a complicated, complex, like philosophical, like we don't have to get that deep into it to be like, but costuming millions and millions of dollars go into this. And it like, I think it would have just been a slight adjustment to be like, who are the Winkies and who are the upper uplanders and who are the Aussians?
Yeah, but
And maybe
there's
they did that and we couldn't see it. Like maybe it's in there and we
wow.
couldn't see it. Did they slightly wear different colors? It looks like Munchkinlanders all have like curly reddish hair, or at least like curly hair in some way. But then that
Kind of
gets lost at Chiz.
freckled faces kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It kind of gets lost at shiz, and I'm thinking I hadn't thought of that, but in a good fantasy epic that spans a world and good costuming in that story, you can often tell where people come from by their look and their dress. And you don't need it. It doesn't need to be explained. Um, you just know that like Yeah. And so, um, yeah, or at
I
least
mean,
we, yeah, yeah,
this is where you get that this isn't a movie adapted from a book. This is a movie adapted from a Broadway show adapted to a movie, right? A book to a Broadway show to a movie, right? We're not getting the opportunity to pull more from McGuire's books, at least not as far as I've seen in like interviews and stuff about it or information about Wicked, the movie, right? Like, there are new songs in Wicked for Good. There's obviously, I think there's, you know, shifted uh screenplay and discussions between characters that are expanded from the Broadway show. Because you do not sit down at the Broadway show and you are not in a 4.5 hour production, I mean,
no.
or a 5 hour production, right? So we have that expansion of conversations between the characters. And so what they chose to do in that, if they were going back and Gregory Maguire's like it says it's adapted from his original book, right? He's in the credits that like Wicked comes from his book, but they didn't. I would have pulled different things if I was a producer in
Well,
it, right?
yeah, and that's it. Like, let's chat about that for a little bit because that's one thing I found interesting is like, yeah, this is a movie that's been adapted from a musical stage play that has been adapted from a book. So, like, at where do we get lost in the sauce a little bit, or like where, just like you said, like where are we drawing on source material or not? They did two new songs for Wicked for Good. I think two new songs. I think both Elphaba and Glinda have a new song. The No Place Like Home is a new song for Elphaba,
Yeah.
which I think
Yeah.
kind of fit a little bit. But then the Girl in the Bubble song is a new song for Glinda. And I mean, I think look, just personally, it was a little lacking for me. But I'm not like, not to, I'm not judging because I don't do that I don't write songs for a living. Um, but I was just like, huh, okay. There was a piece of it just didn't feel like it fit, but I could see how all of the rest of it worked well together. Um, I am kind of curious though, like when they were thinking about this adaptation, like is it, was it just for money or was it for to really, obviously usually in a stage show you get like an intermission, so you do have a little bit of a break, you can use the bathroom and stuff like that. Movies don't do that anymore. They used to at the theater, if you are old enough to remember that. And so I've been wondering, it'd be interesting to like find some news on this or some, some about this, but I've been curious if they, in thinking about this adaptation, if they were like, we can just expand this story out a little bit, we'll make it two movies, it's gonna be a hit, like people are definitely gonna, they're gonna wait for it. They filmed it all together, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
continuity. They filmed it all together and then just edited it out in post-production for two films. um so I'm just kind
The
of
movies are
curious.
split at what would have been intermission. The
Yeah.
movies are split at what would be intermission, right? You
Yep.
get Alphaba like being wickedized in act one, right? And it's splitting from um the desire to be loved by the wizard, and you come back to in part two after intermission with um the Aussians like falling in line to see her as the wicked one, and Glinda coming to power or coming.
In the books, do they talk about how much time passes? Because like in the movie, it is a little bit difficult to tell, and I've heard that in the stage play it's hard to tell too. They say 12 tides of 12 tides of turn, and you don't always know how much 12 tides are. I was wondering if a tide is seasonal and 12 is maybe like 3 or 4 years. Or but we have the cub visually, the little lion cub, like the lion gives us, because Elphaba frees him, he's a little cub, and then the next movie he's grown, and what's that, a few years that a lion is mature, maybe, I don't know. So it's like they give you a couple clues, but does the book give you any like span of time that
Oh,
this
there's
takes
so
place?
much story. There's so
Okay.
much story in the book. I mean, that is where the biggest portion of the story is. What is not in Wicked, the musical, the stage performance is what is in the book. You're getting
Oh, interesting.
Alphaba goes underground, and her sister then becomes the governor of Oz, and the governor of Munchkinland, and Munchkinland succeeds, and Alphaba goes deep undercover and basically is a anarchist to Oz in underground circles, living. I mean, technically, I think she's living in a city in an apartment. Um, Hiding her greenness and her features in some sort of way. Fierro is doing similar stuff on his own. Caveat, Fierro and Alphaba, like we gave away that part. Fierro and Glinda never have a love interest in Maguire's book. Fierro is a married man. He is a married prince, leader, king, or whatever of the Winkies. Like there's never a love interest. Fierro is in their friend circle. And there was always a thing with him in Alphaba in terms of um, caring about, um, living in a free and honest society. He sort of has bucked his princely sort of duties, and they keep sort of. Do they keep finding each other? It's just woven in there as like, she's trying to fight the wizard and free the animals, um, and it gets very, and all this is where Alphaba's complicated story, where like all of these struggles and all of this fighting like wears her down,
Yeah.
and she loses loved ones in that period of time. That complicated relationship with her sister until her sister's death, right? But they have been angry at each other for their own personal reasons for all of their like young adult lives, um, and they're not like they're both doing their own thing. Like Nessa Rose becomes a really like austere leader of Munchkinland. The Munchkinland, though she secedes from the wizard, the Munchkinlanders end up hating her. So it's interesting in Wicked that they take all of that and fuse it into the relationship with Bach, right? That like she says Munchkinlanders as well as animals can't leave without express permission from the governor, and then you see Bach being completely upset that he is like imprisoned in Munchkinland now and cannot freely leave. Those are bigger stories in
Yeah.
Maguire's book.
Interesting. Okay, so it's kind of like yeah, I mean, it's a real adaptation, it's definitely not a one to one. They pull out a couple storylines and they add a couple things for drama and for dramatic effects for the stage play and for the musical of it all. It's really interesting to think about just how it has come to be then, because the Baum books are for kids. Um, and even if L. Frank Baum had a lot of his own ideas about, how the world should work and how societies should be designed, you know, that's not heavy handed in the books. There's maybe like little things that might maybe inspire some of the ways that the story is told. But it's a book for kids, and that's not really what it's about. The Maguire books are books for adults that are really like getting into some serious themes around like prejudice and freedom and liberty and the ideas of who can have it and who can control it. And again, there's obviously like all of that exists in Baum's Oz, but it's like that's not the point of the stories. But like obviously we have this wizard who does not come from there, who is like usurped power. And anyway, so in the Maguire books, yeah, clearly for adults, definitely examining like deeper themes, more complex themes, I will say. And all of the stories do focus on women. Like these are stories about women. You know, I mean, because even in the beginning, like it's Dorothy. So I think that that's just kind of a cool thing.
I
But
mean,
yeah.
also, unless this part of the book, sorry, unless this part of Wicked, the movie and the musical is in another McGuire book, or because we're talking about this musical stage production to movie is a combination of Baum and McGuire, right? But in McGuire's book, Glinda is a minor role. Like the
Mm,
development of Glinda and Alphaba's friendship, like Alphaba is never, only for a very short period of time, is she immersed in this circle of friends. And Glinda is consistently mean girl, is like mean girl to her,
uh-huh.
consistently. Like she, in a scene, she plays a prank and sends Alphaba has to stay at school because her father doesn't love her. So like she's not going away when school is out, right? She stays on campus and she gets a letter from Glinda to come to Glinda staying at another wealthy, well-to-do girl's summer house somewhere. And Alphaba gets a letter to come join them. And when she shows up, the girl whose actual house it was is like, "Why are you here? Like, who invited you?"
Wow.
Yes, like pranks are played on her. And I don't, there's no place in the story. McGuire's book does not end with like Glinda becoming the hero, like, and Glinda
Interesting.
finding herself. First book. This is what I don't know. This is where my knowledge now ends, and somebody in the chat can fill in at some point, or I need to read the books and we'll come back and we'll do another one, right? But
Well,
like, I do
yeah.
not know.
Well, and that
The
definitely is,
Glinda friendship story arc is solo to the musical production.
yeah, that's an adaptation. Yeah, and then it's interesting to think about what also, yeah, what happens in Oz after the wizard leaves in both stories, because in the Bomb books, I'm pretty sure that the scarecrow, because he is now the smartest person in the land of Oz. I think the scarecrow becomes like the leader of Oz. But that's also, yeah, and then but then they need to find Ozma and all of that. So like I think the Scarecrow and the Tin Man end up like running Oz. Um anyway, it's interesting. And then again, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Scarecrow and Tin Man. And I think we're trying to decipher in like pop culture conversations, the themes pull through. No, Bach in the books, Bach gets married. Like Bach did love Glinda and was part of their friend group, but like he gets married and has like kids and stuff.
So he
Um,
doesn't become the Tin Man in the books.
no,
Yeah.
no.
And then does Fiero become the Scarecrow in the book? Spoilers, everybody, spoilers.
Yeah, can we just go right into the spoiler?
Which
Should I just jump right in?
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So
What's
Fiero dies, like in the book. Fiero in his
Oh.
actions and activities, he dies. Unless
Yeah,
he
I
comes
mean,
back. Like I'm trying it's now been months and months since I read the book, but he dies at some point, and that's part of Alphaba's like shift into like I don't want to be good anymore. Like she has a
oh,
child, Fiero's gone. She's not really accepted by the Winkies, but she lives there and it's like her life just kind of gets more
bad.
cruddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She just has a really
Right?
bad lot in life.
Yeah.
And yeah, interesting. Um, okay. I would just, this is just a little bit of a side, but I really thought that when he, when he became the scarecrow that he looks like Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah,
It's
it's like
like
that
that is
that
Ryan
costuming
Reynolds'
is your
face.
like, and you literally became like Ryan Reynolds, and it looked like someone ran him over with like a coffee
It was funny.
What are they called? Like a bag that raw coffee comes in and
Oh
gets
yeah, like a
shipped to the
burlap
ship.
sack. Yeah. I was feeling it though. I was like, they were like roughing him up and stuff, and I was like, oh my god, I think that Fiyero is gonna become the Scarecrow. Like I just had
Yeah.
I kind of felt it with the Tin Man too, but we don't have to spend too much time on it. But one thing I just don't like about the stories is because this is a big part of Oz Great and Powerful is that in Oz Great and Powerful, the Wicked Witch of the West decides she becomes bad because like the wizard doesn't love her. And I'm like I can't with these women. Like because also who wrote that? Like that is not someone. I'm sorry y'all. A woman who is that powerful, who is like that much grounded in like what she wants in life. I don't know, but also, maybe she wasn't, but I'm just like she wouldn't care. Like you'd be hurt for a little while. I don't think you're going to like destroy the whole world over it. Um
I mean,
but
we get that. We
whatever.
get. I mean, that's funny, and I think I do agree. There's lots of character arcs for women around that, but like we also see this with Nessa Rose, right? Like these ideas come from, you know, she becomes the freaking governor of Munchkinland. In some way, she might have a bit of the magical. She goes over to the Grimmery and has the ability to like read those words, but she's consumed by her disability. She's consumed by the fact that she can't be loved with her disability. I love that part of the movie when Alphaba is like, I have loved you your entire life,
Yep.
and it has never been
Never been enough.
enough.
Yep. Because the real villains in the story, I mean, everybody is lots of people are doing very questionable things. But
Sorry,
the
I have a
people
cat that just keeps telling me to let him in and out.
let me out. People are doing very questionable things, but the people who are doing things that are truly devious and truly sinister are Madame Morble and
Oh,
Nessa
yes.
Rose.
I was
And
trying to tell my 5-year-old niece in the movie theater, like, it's Madame Morrible. And she's looking at me like, what are we talking about, Aunt Maria? And I was like, she's the really bad one. And her like 5-year-old brain is just like not quite processing yet. I was like, that's the really evil one over there.
she's the real villain. Well,
Yeah.
you know what I say about you know what I say about women whispering in men's
We
ears.
need more Madame Morrible. Now we need Madame Morrible's backstory. Why is she an evil bitch? Like, why is
Yeah.
she
Okay.
why like
That is a perfect segue. So like let's talk about what could be. I also just realized it's like a quarter after 4, so we should wrap this up soon, but let's
yes,
talk about
yeah.
like what could be, right? Because there's so much source material between like Baum books, between McGuire books, between like even with visual things that they've created in the past, shout out Feruza Balk. Just like, can we give Feruza
Yes.
Balk back?
Right? Right?
um, so like, what do you think might be next? Because based on just the reception of these movies, I mean, it really hit hard at the box office, I think, and I think even the fans of the stage show say that the second half is not the one. The first half is really where it's at. The second half is fine. I feel that way with Wicked for Good. Like, but these are two different. There's like two sides of the same coin. Like Wicked is kind of like it's not light, but we're getting this lightness. Like Elphaba for the first time is like finding friendship and love in a place where she belongs, right? Then we go then her world is toppled, and we go to the other side where she is living in hiding, basically doing like um guerrilla actions against the state. She's a free, like she's, like in reality, this is what she's doing, and she doesn't have support or love. She's doing it all by herself. It is a darker story. Like it is filmed darker. The costuming is darker. Like it is the notes and the tones and the music are darker. The songs are darker. It is a darker story. Um, it's a little bit with the Fiyero Elphaba, we have a love scene in this movie, which also is interesting that it's kind of like wrapped up within this dark package, because it is sort of like the bright one, like kind of bright spot that we have, but it is also like dark in a way, like it's sexy rather than like cute and romantic, which is what you might think. And so I actually was wondering, like, does it get a PG-13 rating for that? I don't know if it
That would still
did.
be That would still be
Probably PG.
PG-13. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's going to be some ranting online over like, they're taking their clothes off, they're
They were all
really
still very
talking
clothed
really
though, but they just
close.
were like it was very suggestive is really more so. But yeah, I bet it's probably skirted the line of a PG-13 rating. They were probably like, "What how far can we push before they're going to give us that?" Cuz they don't, you know, they probably don't want that. But yeah, there's so much more story to tell. There's other characters, right? Like Baum told these stories about Dorothy and then started telling stories about Ozma and other people. And then McGuire came out and said, you know what, I'm going to tell stories about completely other people. So there's a whole Ozverse to tell stories about. What do you think? What do you think they'll do? What do you think they'll do next? If like, do you think this is the end of these stories in this like current era right now?
Oh, no, I mean, because technically, The Wizard of Oz, there's a Wizard of Oz in development. And when we think about it, The Wizard of Oz um, is a snapshot in time of the story of Oz, right? Wicked is a much broader arc than
Yeah.
The Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz is the story of Dorothy, right?
Yep.
Coming and the wizard goes away. So what I would love to see is some sort of integration with this potential new Wizard of Oz. We haven't, I mean, we've had, I think, lesser wizard, like you said, you've watched these ones on TV, but we haven't had a big blockbuster Wizard of Oz, the sort of the exact story as the 1939 film, or based on that without some crazy interpretation like the Tin Man or the
Yeah.
other ones. And can we build out, like in those parts where Wicked ends, can we build out because the wizard leaves at the end, right? The balloon accidentally goes up, right? And he is left. And we know from some stories, the Tin Man and the Scarecrow take over. From other stories, Glinda takes over. Madame Morrible's put in prison. Like, can we get a cliffhanger in some way? Because now, then, from that, we're setting the stage for, um, where does everybody go? Right. And I think it would kind of be a non-Alphaba and Fiero next step, right? Because in, I forget right now. I think I forget. I believe Alphaba is melted as well at the end of the Maguire book, but
Mm.
in a and by Dorothy, but it's a far more complex. That story is in there, but there's talk in the book. There's allusions to the fact that she still has the power of the Grimoire. She's still magical. So, like, could
She
she
can come back.
reform?
Yeah.
Can you come back? Right? Um, so we've got that, but they set up Wicked for good as like with them going off in the desert and her not really actually have melted. And that kind of seems like the end for her in terms of future movies. Because it wouldn't, to me, it wouldn't be a super compelling story that they go off into the desert and then they freaking come back. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
somebody could figure out in my brain right now, it's not like a fun story. Because if they're crossing the desert, right? Oh, but you said in L. Baum's books, there's other worlds, right? There's like
There's other
across
worlds.
the desert.
There's other lands outside of Oz. So there's like the gosh, I cannot remember, but there's yeah, there's like the place where the China dolls, and they're like teacups and stuff like that. Like they're like China, as in terms of like dishes and dolls and like things that are made from fine China porcelain. Um so there's a land of that, and there is, oh, actually they do this in Emerald City. In Emerald City there is a land, the land of Ev. And Yeah, and the Queen of there's a Queen of Ev. Yeah. So there, yeah, there's other lands. Um there's other lands that Dorothy and Ozma have to travel to. Um
Yeah. I think
so
there's enough fandom. I feel like there's enough fandom. We're talking about stories and adaptations since 1900, right? We're talking
yeah,
about now 125 years worth of fan fiction and adaptations. I think there's enough fodder for like more of the story. And it does feel like it's gonna if it, how blockbuster it is kind of depends on what this interpretation um for this Wizard of Oz in development. You're
yeah.
gonna love it. I guess the producer, um I don't know how it works in Hollywood. Kenya Barris is writing the, yep, I knew
Are you
your faces.
serious?
Yep. So I mean, I think it's going to be wonderful and interesting. I mean, he's a fabulous writer. Has Kenya Barris done any like fantasy projects?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
I
I'd
don't
have
know
to look it
either.
up. Huh,
Um,
interesting. Well, and that's probably going to have then a more diverse cast, potentially. That also just reminds me of the Wizard of Oz, done with the Muppets, which Ashanti plays
Forgot about that. Yeah.
Dorothy, and I think Queen Latifah like Auntie M. Anyway, it's, I don't know, just fun. Yeah,
I think that's great. That goes back to what we were talking about the fact that Oz is a really diverse nation,
yeah.
right? Oz is a diverse nation. It can be interpreted that we go through like Oz country, the Winky armies there, the Winky princes, like
The
uh
Wheelers, like there's peoples.
right?
Yeah,
Yes, there are peoples, and when they travel in the Wizard of Oz story from Munchkinland to Emerald City should be a really diverse place, right? It really should.
it should,
So
especially if it's the center of all of the lands, right? Like if all of the lands sort of like touch at Emerald City, then you'd think, yeah. So I
it is the
wonder,
hub, yeah.
it's the hub. I wonder if, yeah, okay. So they're, if they've got a Wizard of Oz in production right now, or at least in talks, um, or in writing, getting things written
Development.
in
I think the term is
development,
development.
that's in development. Um, that could be really cool because, yeah, who knows what could happen with that. I love, after you said it, I started really loving the idea of a Madame Morrible prequel. Like, what's her story? But here was my kicker for me, where I was like, they should totally get one of the people from K-pop Demon Hunters to play like a young Madame Morrible. I love Michelle Yeoh. You had me at Michelle Yeoh. I will show up for Michelle Yeoh. Michelle Yeoh is not a singer, and I know that
Yeah,
she works a
that's
lot
true.
with John Chu, and I think that's probably why he has her in there. And I like her as Madame Morrible, but she's not the singer, right? And so anyway, I think if you
Mhm.
were to do like a young Madame Morrible story, you get a singer, you get somebody, you get a singer.
That's a
Anyway,
great segue too to the fact that in Wicked, we have two magical people only. Morrible can produce storms in the sky in Alphaba,
is that it?
right?
Like in the book,
Yeah, like where
or in the like?
no, in the book there are all sorts of people who do all sorts of things. Like it's subtle. Things are subtle. Magic is subtle at this point in McGuire's book, but like, right, we need the story of like
Where's all
you
the
would think
magic?
you would think, where did the magic go? And why does Morrible have this one thing that in some way she hides? She hides it. Like she doesn't hide the fact that she has magic, but people don't necessarily know that she moves the skies.
Yeah,
She hides the fact that she can control nature,
and
right? But she wants people to know she's magical, just not that she does that. So
interesting, because Shiz
yeah,
also like isn't like magic school. It is just like where you go to school,
yeah.
right? Like,
It's the university.
It's the
Yeah. There's
university.
other universities though, because Fierro talks about the fact that he'd been kicked out of
Oh,
multiple
right.
universities already.
Right.
Um, but there is obviously careers that are based on sorcery and magic, right? But yet, like, it's only Madame Morrible, and like the fact that Glinda, who wants to be, people aren't surprised at magic, but yet we don't get introduced in the Wicked musical with other magical people other
Right.
than.
It's like magic exists and nobody is surprised by it, but also surprised by it.
Yes, and I think that in Wicked and Wicked for Good, we could get a little bit more on the history of the Grimmery, right? The Grimmery in
Yeah.
McGuire's books. I think it's in McGuire's books, or maybe it was something else that I absorbed that, like, could the Grimmery actually be from our world? Could there be a crossover? Could it have been a person from our world in Oz hundreds, thousands of years before this story? What is the Grimmery? How did the language get lost in the Grimmery? There's so much.
There's
There's
so
so much.
much. There's so much. Oh my gosh. I would actually love for them to depart from all of the characters that we're already familiar with and go deep into the history. When animals ruled more and when magic was more, whatever. In the Emerald City show, TV show, the scientists come over from our world. Vincent D'Onofrio um is kind of brilliant, but lacks charisma and is not really seen as a peer by his fellow scientists, and does not like that. And so when he finds himself in Oz, he realizes that he can use his knowledge to his advantage because there's a lot of aspects to Oz that are very primitive, and he is a scientist and he knows how to he knows how to make chemical, you know, uh he knows how to make things happen just by using different natural elements, right? And so he like uses this to his advantage, but this is how he then starts to control everyone because he also then convinces them that magic can't be trusted and that science is the path forward. And so it's his influence that causes there to be like this lessening of magic. I like that as like I don't think a lot of this should be built onto the wizard or he should be that powerful, but I like this as an idea that the more that like influence from our world come into Oz, then maybe magic is lessened. And I also like the idea that maybe it does also have something to do with Ozma and with the royal family that was displaced. So I agree. I would love to get like some prequel stuff.
Yep. There's, it feels like there's a lot. That'd be an amazing magic. I mean, done right, done well. Also, like, even more fan fiction, written fan fiction. Like, we don't really, I don't, I think McGuire's books go forward, not back, right? So, like, if you want more to understand, like, the Grimmery and Ozma, and it's not in Baum books, then it's
It
ready
needs to
and
be
right for
written.
someone. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, if there is like, an estate or something like that that holds these, I mean, at some point, Wizard of Oz is going to age out of its, what's that, like copyright or trademark or whatever, 150 years or whatever. I don't know what that means, but it like becomes public property or something. So, um, anyway, I think it could be. I wonder if given all of the like, you know, fanfare about it, if actually somebody might like tap an author in specific and say, hey, let's do a prequel series, a prequel.
Yeah. Yeah.
That could be
Well,
amazing.
that's also interesting as we get into like books and writing now, right? Like, does it feel like we've this will be a whole other like live stream, but like, does it feel like when it comes to fantasy, we've hit an interesting, like a wonderful place, but a different place than um like technically like McGuire's books were never really that famous, right? They're
Yeah.
not like this series that people really they were never as famous as Wicked the Broadway show
Right.
or the Wizard of Oz movie. And so where is the place for writers for these interpretations of already existing worlds and stories? And, if they're not you'd have to come in with a passion. I don't think it's something where like you're doing it for, unless it's intensely well written, but I don't think we have a lot of like precedent where like you would take an already existing story and then all of a sudden make it in the book world like
Yeah. Yeah.
be loved again, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That is a little bit of a different thing. If you're saying like, let's build some novels so that we can make movies from them, but why don't we might as well just write the screenplay and make the movie? Um,
Yeah, it seems like it would go straight into like screenplay and then maybe things are written about it
yeah.
around it, right?
Well, what would we know, okay, so the Wizard of Oz is potentially in development. It's, how far along in development. What, I just want to know what versions outside of what we've already talked about. Are there any other like parts of these stories that you would love to see be brought to like visual adaptation?
Like parts of existing written, like McGuire's
Yeah.
books and stuff.
Yeah. Or even like even bomb books or even old movie stuff. Like I guess I'm just kind of thinking of like in a space where now it's well received and people are kind of like ready for it. What more stories do you want to see from
Oh, like I
this?
really wish we could get like a feature film that's not a musical, that's Alphaba's like magic. Like
Mm.
true or I think Baum's book is I never say never, right? In society right now. No, because it wouldn't happen anytime soon because I think overall the world like Wicked and the Wizard of Oz is still a family thing, and but like I myself would geek the hell out about an actual Alphaba origin story based on McGuire's first book,
Yeah, like
right,
a
where we're
real.
really seeing her born and grow up, and it would be a very complex, it would have all of the themes of being different and the pain and suffering of being different, developing you as a person, and that being different or being ugly to people doesn't mean you can't be good inside, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I do like in Wicked for Good, I do like the arc because despite knowing the show, like the Broadway show, I never buy into on a daily basis that Glinda is good, right? Like, and technically in the Broadway show, she's not, and she says it. I love that they put that line in there, like, I'm not good yet, right? There's a lot I gotta do before the world would consider me good.
Yeah.
Um, and so I never buy into it. That was the other like discussion with my niece, and I was like, technically, Alphaba's the good one.
Yeah.
Right? I know you love princesses, and Ariana Grande is beautiful in this, and she's beautiful, and her costumes are beautiful, but Alphaba's the good one. Like just nudging her in that story to be like, she's got a lot of work to do before we'd consider her good.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really dynamic story too.
That would be interesting to tell that story. Yeah, more true to the tone of McGuire's book, So, probably most with an R rating and really like exploring these heavy themes. Um, right. Yeah. Cause the musical aspect of it, the desire to, is just another piece that keeps it more family oriented. Um, and keeping it more family oriented, obviously, I think, yes, creates like more of a general audience, but you have to shave away some of those more complex um, topics and concepts. And yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought of that, but that would be cool. Yeah. And I think I would love, I mean, I already said I'd love some more like deep prequel stuff, some lore. Um but I think I'd really, yeah, I think I'd also just really get into like some Oz and Mombi stuff, and I'd like them to. I think I'd, or Ozma is who I meant, Ozma and Mombi, and I think I'd like them to kind of explore a little bit more on the bomb universe of it, because there are these other peoples and other lands, and um, so I think that could be interesting to get into, and I'm curious what the new Wizard of Oz, like what that would then be other stepping stones to, because I don't think they'll stop. I mean, if Marvel can make like whatever, like 21 Avengers movies or something, then I mean, you can just keep telling this story, and there's a lot of source material, and there's a lot of different characters to draw from, and so yeah.
Do you think that the Wizard of Oz um anthology of all of it is bigger than the Wheel of Time in terms of fandom, in terms of demand?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I originally was just thinking like the amount of words and pages, and maybe not. I don't know if it would be more words and pages than the Wheel of Time, but I do think, yeah, it's bigger fandom. For one, it's been around a lot longer, so it's had decades and decades. It's had multiple generations of time to get into the pop culture. I mean, just like, we grew up watching it with our families. That's huge. Something that's so you know just a household name. People, I'm not going to assume that everyone knows this, but a lot of people, you could probably ask them who Dorothy and Toto are, and they might have an answer for you, no matter who they are. And, um, or if you ask who the Wizard of Oz is, they might have an answer. I think like that's how baked in it is, even if you've never even seen the movie or read the books, or even if you probably know what that is. So I think that's, yeah. I mean, that's pretty deep seated. So yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that's what turning the Broadway show into a movie has increased that exponentially in a more complex way. So, like, whereas, the mass majority would have been like The Wizard of Oz is a family show and it's about princesses and witches um and they not really put a lot of thought into it. I think we now have a mass culture that's like, this is a complex story and I'm interested.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. And we have
so
audiences now too that are more, I just think we are more seasoned audience participants now. Like, people can watch shows that carry long story arcs throughout a whole season. They can hang in for season after season on like really complex things. And so I think, yeah, I think audiences are, yeah, we're more sophisticated in that way, and we we can handle a complex story. So yeah, I don't know, I'm
yeah.
excited.
And we're liking longer story arcs, right? We
Yes.
don't just want a 2 hour movie that doesn't
Right.
have anything else, right? We're like, oh, really? I remember when we went to go see, you all came with us to go see Hal's Moving Castle, right? When it was like its 25th anniversary, and Kevin came out of the theater and was like, it's just such a simple
It's a
story.
very simple
And I was
story.
like, yeah, and there's also nothing else. You're not getting anything else from Studio Ghibli on Hal. right? Like it was a one-time story and just the utter disappointment, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah. It's like we
got
want
such
more.
we want more.
We want more. I'm ready for more. Give me more. Okay, I think that's good. I mean, with that too, look, if anybody's watching this, to check it out and give us a comment of like what version of Oz would you want to live in, or what stories do you want them to tell? Um I think, yeah, do you have any final thoughts? I mean, I also I we don't want to dig too far into this because we'll be here much longer. But I think there were some new things added to Wicked for Good that were maybe pretty relevant for like time today. But also, Wicked is a story about um power and corruption, and those who would seek to control it, and um so all of that's already like part of it. Anyway, I think it's interesting, kind of given where we're at today, and then having these stories about people that would want to um yeah, subjugate others, lie about it, place blame on individuals, and it's all very timely.
All very timely. And I think they did a good job trying to keep simple what is very complex. You see in Glinda, um, the internal conflict, the turmoil of like, I want to be loved. And in that, I make these decisions to make sure that I am loved. And I do not see, she did not, she spent the entire story not having a vision of there being love in honesty and love in truth. Right. And that's where I do think that like that bubbles, the new bubble song kind of fits in because the bubble song is about like, you can have a really happy life if you keep your eyes closed.
Yeah.
And maybe it's time to open my eyes and who am I in that?
Yep.
And I think it is, it's just scratching the surface of how complex it is for all of us. We've been demonizing each other. We demonize each other. Um, we want the world to be good, and then we question what goodness is, right? And we get that in some of the wizard's lines and conversations with the wizard in Alphaba, where the wizard is like, this is the truth, actually is this, it's whatever people believe, the masses believe. And Alphaba, in her own inner turmoil, eventually is able to come back and say, no, the truth is the freaking truth.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's all very timely. I'm excited. I feel like we have to wrap this up because it is, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a 4:45. So
I know we need to.
time is going.
I've got we have adulting to do.
We have adulting to do. This was fun, and this had been long in the works. We've been talking about this for a while. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that you were able to be here. Do you have any, I don't know, final thoughts, shout outs, words of encouragement, anything you'd like to share?
No, shout out to you and this live stream that's going to be happening through various journeys of amazing stories. I'm excited to see more. I'm happy to participate.
Yay!
Love, love, love to do it again and talk with my bestie about good stories. And yeah, hopefully at some point, let's see if we get some comments, even if people view this later, and other things we can talk about around this, because I think even you and I have more to talk about
So much
the
to talk
Wicked
about.
story,
So
right?
much to talk about. Okay. All right. Well, and then my final thoughts are just thank you for hanging out and checking this out. If you were listening, give us a little thumbs up, like and subscribe, do all that stuff. We will keep doing these streams, talking about all the stories that we love, and hanging out and doing it with our friends. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you all in the Storyverse.